Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the JRPG Report. This is episode 177. My name is James Fisher. Thank you so much for tuning in this week and every week. We've got a fun little show for you guys. Not a ton of things to talk about, but there are some interesting stories out there. We're going to lead off first and foremost, if you, of course, saw the thumbnail for this episode, as I would guess that most people did before listening. We made the joke a couple weeks ago about that meme about, think about what Final Fantasy was 20 years ago, and you might think about Part 4, Part 6. No, it's Final Fantasy X 20 years ago on the PlayStation 2. So, being a bit of a short week, I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about that and the various remasters that have come out over the past couple of years. So you've got every opportunity to play this masterpiece and its follow-up, an equally impressive game in its own right, but very different. I would certainly prefer the first one. The two, we talked a few weeks ago about the possibility that 10.3 is not completely dead. So what this all stems from is a interview with Famitsu with various key members of the Final Fantasy X development team, and they were kind of looking back on some of the things that stood out in their minds, and I thought were some interesting things I'd like to pass along to you. If you're like myself, you hold the game in high regards as one of the best PlayStation 2 RPGs, and I'd say at worst probably a top 5 Final Fantasy title in my rankings. So the key members of this group included Yoshinori Katase, Tetsuya Nomura, Mamoru Toriyama, and Kazushi Nojima, how they felt about working on this game. The first part of the interview kind of concerned most of the conceptualization of the characters. They included Titus and how... did they get into that in the next one? There's this. I tried to actually look at the interview, and there hasn't been a proper translation of the entire thing put out there yet. Google, it did its best to translate it, and I just didn't feel it was very accurate in order to read the entire thing to it. But what I thought was interesting was not only was Titus or Titus, I still don't know how you're supposed to say that. I'll just say Titus, was originally due to the water theme of the game. His first idea was pitched that he was actually a plumber, and that this would serve to get the characters into and under the water, I guess, which Blitzball eventually kind of came in there instead of like, hey, let's go with more of the athlete and playing an underwater sport rather than random plumber dude and going on RPG. Not, nothing against Mario. He's iconic and storied and certainly has done his part, but I think they probably went for a better feel with Titus and going that route. Also interesting enough that originally pitched Auron was supposed to be a silent character. And imagine all those great lines that he has and being the role model character for not only Titus, but for Yuna as well, and the Guardian. Can you imagine him not talking? That would have been just odd, to say the least. The second part of the interview focused on the concept of the story itself. Nojima, the scenario writer for the game, revealed that it was the child and parent part of the story that was one of the final bits added to it with Jecht and that relationship going on. The story was always meant to focus on Yuna's journey as a summoner. From there, Spira was created. So they kind of talked about how normally they have the characters first and then the world. With 10, it's that Spira was actually created first, and then they kind of went along with elements to go into that world. The feud between Titus and Jecht was also added later, they said. Additionally, the story was would they focus on history repeating itself like a spiral, which the If you play the game and sin in it, it constantly goes around like a spiral. That's pretty cool. Nojima also mentioned that during the early development of the game, he was reading diaries from members of the kamikaze units of World War II fighters. He said that the resignation and determination of the members were inspiration for the core members of the team. It was always the intention to portray Titus as an outsider to the events. He wanted him to be the projection of the player in this foreign world. I think they did a pretty good job with that. While he tried his best to fit in and was accepted by a lot of those people, he still always had that outsider feel and star blitzball player, Xanarkir and Abe's. Got all those fun memories popping up in your head as I'm reading this. The interview went on to reveal that Yoshinori Katase, the producer of the game, he said he cried when he first played the game. He said he found the story of Titus and Jake to be more moving, actually, than the story between Titus and Yuna. And he said he was actually shocked by the quality of the voice acting for the Japanese version of the game. Doesn't mention how he felt about the American or the English voices for it. I thought especially at the time, we kind of take for granted voice acting in games, and if a case like the Cold Steel series, it really sticks out when there's not voice acted scenes or they do random half and halves. That started back then. A lot of voice acting in the game, and now we've got something like FF7 Remake where practically every single thing is voice acted. And that's a phenomenal accomplishment. But it all started kind of back there. You wouldn't have what we have today if it weren't for games like Final Fantasy X. There were real-world inspirations for Spira. Nojima revealed that during a trip to Okinawa inspired him. Makes sense with all the water and the beautiful scenery and the tropical settings. Nomura was the character designer for this entry. He revealed that the overalls that Titus wore were originally part of his original design as a plumber, so that's kind of the tie-in. But this outfit was modified for a more athletic look. I guess I never really saw it before, the overalls looks, but if you really look at it, it does say that, kind of shows that. And the interview revealed that Orin was intentionally said to be silent, however, due to his role as a guardian, to both end up with more spoken lines. Additionally, Nomura mentioned that Orin's age wasn't decided until later on, and that it's common in the development process for characters' ages to change. He also acknowledged that if he was a father 20 years ago, Jack's writing might have been a bit different. Nojima revealed that he read cryptology books to help to inspire the Al-Bed language that was found in the game. He mentioned that the version of the language that made into the game is a simpler version of what he initially envisioned. And at the very end of all this, they do tease, of course, about that Final Fantasy X-3 possibility. I still think it's a long shot at best, but stranger things, of course, have happened. This is from our friends over at Siliconia. I feel like they're kind of working through this translation. Maybe there may be some more tidbits pop up. But so where would you rank Final Fantasy X in your pantheon of, let's just keep it to Final Fantasy games. I don't know. If you really, really love it, how does it rank as far as your all-time JRPGs? Or if you don't particularly care for it, where does it, I kind of feel like, for a lot of gamers my age, right? Not ashamed to admit it, just past 40 years old now. We grew up with more Nintendo, Super Nintendo, so games like Chrono Trigger and Final Fantasy III are cemented in our legacy as all-time greats. I feel like the PlayStation generation after us, they hold Final Fantasy VII and VIII more in high regards. But then you've got after that, and that's kind of getting into more like my younger brother's age range. So like the first JRPG that he played was Final Fantasy X. So curious maybe with some of our younger listeners, is that the case with you as well? Do you hold it in a little bit higher regard because it was maybe your first one that you really experienced and connected to? I feel like we have a lot of those games kind of within us that's at that certain age, and I want to say 12 to 15 or 16, that those early teenage years, you're into your budding adulthood years. You got all the feelings now that you didn't used to have when you was a kid. Things are more serious now. And then you play games that really hit all those emotional things. Where does this game rank for you? Like I said, I think it's easily inside my top 5 Final Fantasy titles. I really, really enjoyed it. And obviously I've bought it a couple times since then, and wouldn't mind going through and playing through it again to see how it holds up all these years later. So that's going to get us started here on the podcast. We usually start off with news, and of course we got a lot of news to talk about, but I'll be frank. So a couple things happened. Not a ton of things popped up. The biggest stories, and we're going to talk about the most information that we have, is probably about Tales of Arise, but we've been talking a lot about it lately, so I didn't want to lead the podcast with it again. You know how that goes. And speaking of which, you guys know I got my PlayStation 5 from GameStop. Well, in order to do that, I had to join the Pro Members things, which, again, if you are looking to score a PlayStation 5, this is the only way to do it, in my opinion. Save up about $800, rather than just the cost of the system. You're going to need a bundle. You're going to need $15 to be a Pro member, and you will get exclusive early access. My good friend and listener Jordan, he asked me last week, how did I do it? What would I recommend? I was like, this is the only way to go. Only way to do it, and immediately he scored a system. Save yourself the time and trouble. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but don't do like myself and millions of other people have done and stress about it for months on end. If you really want this system right now, it's pretty much the only way to do it. I have heard some rumors that even a few systems popped up in store in Walmart, but is that something you really want to deal with? I don't think so. I think that would be almost as impossible as this. At least you got a chance. So anyway, as a part of that, you get the Game Informer digital subscription. I have yet to get any of those emails and issues. I saw there was a big RPG issue about Tales of Arise and a bunch of other stuff. I thought, perfect. I will talk about that on the podcast, and I cannot access it. They will not send me an email to confirm my membership. I've tried to reset password. Something is lost in the ether somewhere, and I cannot do it. So I had a bunch of stuff planned for this week, and it kind of just all fell through. So bear with me. We've got some fun things to talk about here. We'll get into some actual news here on episode 177. This is precisely the time of year when news gets a little bit lighter than usual. After E3, we've got Gamescom coming up here in just a few weeks, and then Tokyo Game Show next month. So there's going to be weeks where we have not a ton of things to talk about. But the first thing I want to get into is Tales of Arise, as we might be talking more than other ones as we lead up to its launch on September the 10th. There was a new trailer released for it. This one starring Kasara and her so big shield. That's been a joke here for a while here on the channel. She is described as a close quarter fighter who uses a hammer and shield so she can guard instead of evading. I actually didn't even realize that she was holding a hammer in addition to her shield. So typically you see the sword and shield combination, but kind of going for that hammer. And that's, we've seen giant hammers before in Tales. I'm trying to think of a one-handed hammer user, and it's not popping in my head right away. I think about Carol, using the giant two-handed one in Vesperia. You've got two-handed axes. I don't know. I'm sure now I didn't play all the Tales games. Don't get me wrong. I came in on Symphonia, so there could be some older ones with some one-handed hammers. But I think when I think of hammers, I immediately go to Final Fantasy XII and their usefulness in that game. But anyway, you can check out that trailer on our YouTube channel. You're seeing it right now if you're watching on the video version of this podcast. It's going to be hard to get this lady out of your party. She looks like as soon as she is introduced, I think it looks like she's going to be either the fifth or sixth character introduced to the party. So once that happens, she is going to be in it for a while. We talked a bit last week about some of the side quests that you're going to be doing. Of course, the fishing mini game that is in there. And it also shows in the trailers in particular, show Kasara being the fisher of the party. I don't know if everybody can do it or not. I would imagine so, but she's the only one that I saw fishing. There's some other side activities that in addition to the cooking thing, I failed to mention this one, and I regret failing to mention it because I'm on the fence about it. There's going to be some sort of farming element to it, and if that raises an eyebrow the same way that it raised my eyebrow, I can't really blame you either. Here's what it says about it. If you can manage the ingredients properly, you'll be able to create a wider variety of dishes along the way. By developing farm and gathering a wealth of ingredients, you can cook a variety of dishes and use additional buffs to your advantage in battles against powerful enemies. Yeah, that didn't say a whole lot. I thought it was going to say more. In some of the screenshots, they showed you kind of working a farm. You even put on your farmer overalls. So maybe it's not as big of a part of the game as I'm hoping it's not. I don't want to go into like a full-blown farming type side quest simulation. That doesn't seem like something I want to do. Here was a short little overview of it that popped up here recently. They say, experience the journey with party members in Tales of Series style. The Tales of game experience is still alive and well in Tales of Arise, with both seriousness and comicality. Comedic elements, let's put it that way. On their epic journey to free the oppressed planet Dana of Rena's domination, Alpha and Xion and their comrades will visit beautiful environments, meet formidable foes, and experience various activities like cooking, farming, and fishing, all the while creating unique bonds amongst themselves. Tales of is a game to experience the characters. In addition to your main scenarios, you can get to enjoy different experiences with characters when you roam around the map. In Tales of Arise, enjoy the development of characters as you uncover the characters' emotions and fates portrayed in different forms of encounters, event movies, animations, skits, and short chats. Event movies, full-length CG movies drawn in accordance with the main scenario, using the atmospheric shader developed for this title and facial CG express the subtleties of the character's emotions. That's, of course, by UFO Table. Those beautiful CG. Well, no, that's not. The event movies are CG. The animation cutscenes is animation inserting into important scenes. That is by UFO Table. I'm sorry. Animated. And they've done most of the work with the Tales of series. Now, skits are conversations between characters during your journey. Skits can be triggered at every stage of the journey, including the progression of scenarios and quests, reaching new fields, encampments, and cooking session. And of course, short chats are conversations during exploration and battle. Conversations can also occur at the end of battles and while moving through towns and fields, and those are going to be in place of the after battle animations. When you see it in action, you kind of see why they kind of did away with it, and I guess I'm okay with it. One of the features of the Tale of the series, the skit system that allows the party to enjoy interesting conversations while exploring the field. There are new aspects about individual characters, get a glimpse into the interesting side of each character from various perspectives, not seen in the main storyline, and establish deeper bonds. The evolved feature of Tales of Rise includes showcasing character expression in 3D, costumes and attachments equipped, as well as location and in-game time of the day will be reflected in the skit cutscenes to enhance your feeling of real-time traveling with the whole party. I love that. There's nothing more that takes you out of an experience than you've got this customized character and you've got them looking how you want, and then it goes to some sort of cutscene, and then they're back to their default, outfit. That really, you want that high quality CG cutscene, but at the same time, it does kind of take you out of the moment for sure. During your adventure, Alpha and his friends will encounter people with various challenges. Of course, you got to do those sub quests. What JRPG would be without tons of side quests to lengthen your playing experience? You can deepen your bonds through communication. On the field, there is a camp, which not only lets you recover HP and CP, but also lets you engage deeper communication with party members. At the camping spot, you can look back at the skits that have occurred along the way. By choosing a character to share a conversation with before going to sleep, you can also see a new side of yourself. The series' familiar cooking system is there. Enjoy the familiar, quirky dishes that come with each character's own specialties. By entrusting them with their specialties, you may trigger special cutscenes. Create tales of classic dishes like the Mabo curry. Entrust characters with their specialties to trigger special cutscenes. In addition, there are also chef-style outfits to get you in the cooking mood. Wearing these costumes and playing skits related to the cooking doubles the fun. You can cook by learning recipes and ingredients to recreate them. By eating food, you can gain various buffs that will be useful for your battles. There are different buffs that come with different recipes. Choose the recipe that best suits you. Some of the mini games and subquests we talked about before, they'd say to look for Hoodle's friends hiding around every corner. Owls of different colors, shapes, and sizes are hidden throughout the towns and fields. By finding the owls, you can return them to the owl village and obtain attachments. Enjoy fishing and expand your collection. You can go fishing at the waterfront during your adventure. Kasara in particular is an avid fisherman. There you go. Other than getting unique fishing results at each fishing spot, you can also record your catch and collect achievements. Oh boy, hopefully there's trophies involved. Besides fishing, there are also artifacts collection to go along that you can do with Dolomin. Collecting artifacts is one of his hobbies, and he has a deep knowledge in arts. By collecting artifacts that drops in various locations, Dolomin can share his knowledge and insights. Above being just a collection, artifacts can also be worn to obtain a variety of buffs to help you in battle. So that's a little bit more of in-depth. I wish I would have had that last week. This was posted about a day afterwards. And just some new pictures. I put all the pictures that were released into a slideshow and put it on our YouTube channel, showing all the various outfits that are going to be included with the DLC versions and that you can also purchase as well. I think that's for the digital deluxe. Those type of things will be included. There's a ton of outfits that are going to be available in this game. I've lost track about how many, but each character looked to have about 10 different ones that I could see. I'm sure it's not going to be cheap, but if you've already paid for it with, let's say, like a special edition or something, hopefully that will be all included. One final note that was, it came out in the live stream that happened last week, but didn't really get talked about. And that was, they were talking with Tamazawa, and he said, Tales of Arise will release as a complete experience and will not inspire a sequel or prequel. It is also not linked to any other Tales of titles. It will also not feature any post-release DLC story content. I'll see if they hold their hold their word on that or not. I kind of hope that it is, as he says, a complete experience, and it is what it is. That they did say that there will be Tales of Arise stuff in the mobile offshoot games. So those characters will pop up in there. But as far as this game is, the game that you purchase is going to be it for now. As far as I can tell, it seemed pretty cut and dry. No DLC, no sequels, no prequels. This is it. And I got to be honest, I really like to hear this. They're Tales of, they do many things well. Sequels is not one of them, in my opinion. Tales of Symphonia 2, an utter dumpster fire of a game. I hated every minute of it. I played through it all. Not like I stopped playing. I played it all. They did much better with Exilia 2. However, the Luger and the other little girl's name that escapes me at the time, I didn't care for their aspect to it. I wanted, if you make a sequel, I want more adventures with that party. I don't necessarily want new people to become the new main characters. So while I liked Exilia 2, I liked the first one a whole lot better. So yeah, let's just stick with that. I didn't play what was it? The first one that had a sequel. I didn't play it. This was the first ones I had an opportunity to play. So yeah, I think this is good news. We'll get a full game that comes out here in a month, and let's see, we've still got the Dolmen trailer to pop up. I think they've been doing those on Friday, so that may pop up tomorrow, but maybe not a whole lot coming out of this one. We get it here in just a few more weeks. I'll talk about anything big that pops up, but we may kind of put a put a lid on Tales of Arise until we get it on September 10th here in the West. If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to follow us on Facebook. We share most of the stories that we talk about there, as well as Twitter. As things pop up, I retweet them. All the stories that we end up talking about on the podcast each and every week. You can also see most of the videos that we talk about on our YouTube channel, JRPG Report. And if you really like what you're hearing, you can give us financial support either through the Anchor app, through Patreon, JRPG Report, or you can send us PayPal directly. That's fine as well. All the links are below in the episode notes. The PayPal link is jamesfisherproductions@gmail.com. Like a couple of our awesome friends have done. We mentioned previously some big-time supporters. I don't mention names often enough. I don't really know, how people feel about those things happening. Maybe you just make a financial contribution. You don't really want all the fanfare that goes along with it. I'm not sure how people feel about it in reality, but we've had some big people step up here lately to kind of support the podcast, and I really can't say enough how much that means to me. All the people listening, I truly appreciate. I really do. But when you kind of take that next step and you make a financial contribution to it as well, that kind of gets me more fired up. Like I've talked about wanting to bring back the Sunday special, right? And one of the easiest way I can see for that to actually happen is if you guys support the podcast. And one person who stepped up in particular is Ethan. This past week, he made a God level support of on our Patreon page, and you can do that as well. I think we've got them as cheap as $2 on Patreon, as cheap as $1 through the Anchor app, and I really appreciate it. Ethan, you really stepped up, and you made me. I'm this much closer to bringing back Sunday specials. If a few more people will step up as well, I will be more than happy to bring those back. Just got to have some material for it, and I've got some good ideas coming. To the news, we mentioned last week briefly that Death End Request 2 is coming to the West in 2022. It has a Japanese release date of August 19th, so just 2 more weeks, and it'll be out in Japan. So I kind of feel like with it coming out now, that should push up the Switch release of it into maybe early 2022. But just want to quickly pass that one along as a kind of a piggyback on last week's talk. We got some news about Shin Megami Tensei 5. Of course, it's coming to the Switch in November. Talking about some of the other people that's involved with it. After that collapse of Tokyo, the protagonist wanders into that ruined Tokyo version that's called Dayot, and apparently he wasn't the only one. His classmates, Yuzuru and Ichiro, have also managed to find themselves in that world and encountering demons, but they reunite and then are able to return to Tokyo. And when they come back, another classmate, Teo, explains that two versions of Tokyo exist. The one they live in, and Dayot, which is ruined. The mythical demons in Dayot have spawned from darkness, and have their sights set on the humans in Tokyo itself. She reveals she's a member of Bethel, which is an organization that has sworn to fight the demons. The team decides to join Bethel and protect Tokyo. I mean, really, what else would you do at that point? If all of a sudden you woke up and realized there was a parallel universe and demons were trying to invade your world from it, you don't just sit back and wait for it. You fight, right? At that point, the demons, I believe, they start to intrude in the world. There was a ton of images that came along with this story. You can check it out, like I said, either on Facebook or our YouTube channel, along with some of the pictures of the demons. These demons are looking... There's one in particular, and I shared its daily video. And how you say it? I don't know how they say this name. It's a really weird one. Manananagull. It's a weird name. It is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in my life. Like it wouldn't be out of place in some horrible low budget horror movie. It's just disgusting. Ugh. They talk a little bit about the press turn battle system. The game features the classic command-based press turn battle system. By striking your enemy's weaknesses, you can increase your turns and get the upper hand. However, enemies can do the same, so beware. While simple, this battle system rewards strategic thought. With new skills added for the game, players can enjoy an even wider range of strategies. There's some new skills called Mesobaryon, which I guess is a lightning-based, the Meso spell. Sanguine Drain, new skill of Humble Blessing. I guess that'd be a healing type skill. And then you talk about the Magatushi skill. During battle, your skills will gradually fill up the Magatushi gauge. Once this becomes full, you can activate special moves. Aside from releasing powerful attacks, they can also be used to heal and support you. Understanding when to use these is key. That sounds about right. They say also beware, though. Enemies can also collect this and activate powerful moves against you. Skill potentials. Demons all carry affinities and weaknesses. Skills that match these demons' affinities become much more powerful, marked with a plus skill potential. Conversely, inheriting a skill that matches a demon's natural weakness leads to a minus skill potential, making it less powerful. Strategically deciding between the damage you can deal versus enemy weaknesses you can strike is key. Keep this in mind when creating your party, so you can choose demons that best fit your playing style. Sounds like it's going to be a fun, dark trip to Tokyo and Dal when this one comes out. Oh gosh, I was at the article at the very bottom saying November 11th in Japan, November 12th worldwide, exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. We haven't talked about this game in a while, so hopefully we'll talk about it next week, as Grand Blue Fantasy Summer 21 special live stream event is going on August the 7th. So that'll be Saturday from 1800 to 2100 Japan Central Time. You'll be able to watch that on YouTube, brush up on your Japanese skills. So 3 hours long. This broadcast will include the latest information on the Grand Blue Fantasy game, future developments, and much more, with a bunch of special guests, including tons of the voice actors, the producer, and the director. So fingers crossed. Grand Blue is you got the mobile games, you got the anime, you've got the fighting game. So hopefully Relink is in there somewhere. Last we heard, it was just slated as a 2022 release date. Maybe we get a little bit more concrete information on it and can maybe see it in action again. It's been a while since we've seen it, so it'd be nice to see it pop back up again. If you are a PlayStation Now subscriber, a not new one, but a JRPG is heading your way, and it's available right now as you're listening to this. Nier Automata is available for PlayStation Now. If you've not got a chance to play it, you will want to do so. Do it now. I mean, this is what you pay the system for. Drop everything. Don't drop everything. Finish what you're doing, and definitely take advantage of getting to play this game. It's a shorter game. I think it's like less than 20 hours. Doesn't take long to get through it. There's a couple different endings if you want to do that route. It will be available until Monday, November 1st. So you got a couple months to check that out. There was Ghost Runner and Undertale were also added to the system. But yeah, that's the big draw there, at least for me. I mean, I've heard Undertale is really fun, and I wouldn't mind playing it perhaps at some point. But yeah, this is a JRPG podcast, and that's what you're here for. So yeah, trust me, if you've not played that game, go spend $20 and pick that up. You will not be disappointed. I don't know for certain. I don't know why I hit my fist like that for this, but don't know for certain this game is coming out. But the ESRB has rated .hack//GU last recode for the Switch. This game is already available on PlayStation 4 and PC via Steam. It came out back in November of 2017. It includes Volume 1 Rebirth, Volume 2 Reminisce, Volume 3 Redemption, and newly developed Volume 4 Reconnection. And a Switch version has yet to be officially announced, but usually when you when you go to the trouble of getting an ESRB rating, that would tend to think that this is actually coming for the Switch. Like I said, it's already available on PS4 and PC, but yeah, maybe Switch will be getting last recode for the Switch, and that would I'm sure that'd be a good thing. Speaking of the Switch, we talked a few weeks ago about PS5 hitting the 10 million mark. Switch has now hit almost 90 million. They're at 89 million units sold. That's a lot of Switch systems out there. Of course, multiple variations of it, but it has been a huge success. I think I saw the other day it's trailing only from last system or last generation. PS4 was at 110 million units sold, which that's a lot. It's a lot of systems. Certainly, there was a very, very successful. Was it the 7th generation? Is that what the last one was? Something like that. But yeah, good things coming as we get closer to this next Switch, hopefully coming at some point in time. There was some new information and screenshots for The Legend of Heroes Kuro no Koseki. 12 new sub-characters were mentioned. And I'm just going to briefly go through these. These are all new characters. Well, pretty much all new. Like this first one, President Roy Gramharts. He was in the end of Cold Steel 4. He's the 23rd president of the Calvard Republic. He won an election against his predecessor, Rocksmith, 2 years ago. I'm pretty sure he was in there. Maybe I'd be wrong. There's Ashen Liu, who is a girl from the Liu family, which holds power within the Hue, the largest syndicate of the Republic. They talk about Paulette, who owns a bistro in the old town, and I believe she rents out a room for Vaughn to have his business in. And she's got a little girl, 6 years old, named Yume, cute as a button. There's Dingo Brad, who is a gossip reporter for the magazine Meld. You've got Nina, who's an up-and-coming actress, and she works with Judith. You've got Gillum Thorndike, who's the general manager of the Marduk Total Security Company. You've got his head of security, which is Qasim Al-Fahid, who wields a giant two-handed sword, which would look more appropriate on Valimar than it does in a human hands. That is insane. And then there's Latoya Hamilton, who she was one of the high apprentices of Professor Epstein, who led the Orbital Revolution. So you might have heard her name pop up. She was associated with the Verne technology company as well. And then there's Ezra, who's an associate professor at Basil College of Science Biotechnology Lab. She's underneath Hamilton. And Albert, who's a high school student. associated with Agnes, as well as his friend Odette. So, some new characters being popped up. We're going to hear more and more about this. Some of the characters included with it as it leads up to its September 30th release in Japan. And don't get me started on when we're going to see this one in the West. We've got new information about Blue Reflection's Second Light. This one actually just popped up today. They talk about some of the characters, but I want to get down to, we've talked about some of the characters before. They talked also about the crafting system. So you can gather materials from heartscapes to cook and craft items. Crafted items can be used in battle. Materials can be found by exploring heartscape and defeating monsters. And of course, crafting will give you an upper hand in battle. So yeah, a lot like the Atelier series, they're definitely borrowing that aspect from it. Maybe not quite as deep as that synthesis system, but definitely you're going to need to do some crafting in order to gain an upper hand, as they say. There is the construction system. Using the tools you obtain, you can build your preferred facilities at the school, gather materials through crafting and exploration, build place in the school, and then work. When your work is completed, special events may occur in those facilities that you make. And they talk about the battle system and reflectors. So, unfortunately for the heroines, the almost dreamlike land of Heartscape can also be extremely dangerous to explore. Monsters stalk the land. Neo and friends will need to use the power of rings to summon weapons, change their appearance, and become reflectors ready to repel the attacking beasts in a hectic, real-time battle system. There's kind of like a transformation, maybe Sailor Moon or Final Fantasy X-2 type of the dress spheres. There's definitely some transformations going on with these girls in their school uniforms and then going to these reflector systems. Ether battles. Throughout battle, the ether points, or EP, necessary to launch skills recover over time, and the recovery speed gets faster the more these skills strike various enemies. If you go over a certain number of points, you will switch to gear, meaning you'll be able to launch multiple skills at once. Chaining up combos will accelerate the battle speed and increase the amount of damage dealt to the enemy. Furthermore, if you reach the third gear, the protagonist will turn into the aforementioned reflectors, unleashing their secret powers onto the enemies. Okay, so that makes a little bit more sense. They start off battle just in their standard school uniforms, and then they can go superpowers and get different outfits. There are also one-on-one battles. This is new. Against a powerful opponent, when you manage to make the enemy falter, one member of your team will approach the enemy. There begins a new fight called one-on-one battle. During this sequence, your party as well as the enemy's movements will become faster, repeating quick dodges and attacks. After linking up a definite number of combos, a super powerful signature check called the one-on-one finisher will be launched. So there you go. That should be pretty impressive to see in action. Blue Reflection's Second Light is due out for PlayStation 4 and Switch on October 21st in Japan. And like we mentioned last week, quickly turning around to PS4, Switch, and PC via Steam on November 9th in North America and Europe. I've got one final thing to talk about, and that is Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin. Their version 1.2 update is out today. It adds the co-op exclusive Monster Clove Toroth, as well as the Hellblade Gavins and Bolt Reaver Astalis, plus additional co-op quests and sub-quests. You can play Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wing of Ruin now for Switch and PC via Steam. First off, I apologize for Jake for not reading his reader review last week. It completely slipped my mind, but it is for Monster Hunter Stories 2, so maybe it's a bit tied into this last story that we've got to talk about here today. I will read it to you. He says, first, let me preface this review by admitting this is my first experience within the Monster Hunter franchise. However, he did read a brief story synopsis of the first Monster Hunter Stories title. While this game is a standalone sequel with its own story, there are some cameos that fans of the first game will appreciate. Additionally, if you're a fan of the original line of action-based games, you will probably enjoy seeing familiar monsters that will make you feel right at home. However, if this is your first dive into the franchise, you will not feel like you've missed out on anything. Delving into the game, the story itself is pretty good. However, most of the narrative is told through your traveling companions, as your main character is the dreaded, quote, silent protagonist, end quote. I never mind that too much. Sometimes that's okay, but it is what it is. As soon as you boot up the game, you can customize every detail of the character you create, which is very cool, as those customizations appear in every scene in the game. But the price you pay is that your character has no voice or opinions of their own. I have never been a fan of the silent protagonist, but he says this is one of the better iterations of that. When it comes to the mechanics of the game, the battle system is very intricate and will require a deep understanding of it in order to master the game. It's completely turn-based, and there's a rock, paper, scissors attack style mechanic that is the most important, as you can completely shut down opposing attacks if you line up the correct combos with your party. This means you will need to be able to anticipate the enemy's attacks before the round starts, otherwise you can end up taking a beating. In addition to attack types, there are weapon types, elements, and a special attack gauge that allows you to ride your monsters in battle. That provides an extra layer of depth to the combat. The good news is that the enemy usually follows a pattern, so once you figure it out, you should be in good shape. Outside of battle, the monster collection system is very deep as well. You can chase down monsters that retreat from battle and collect their eggs from dens in order to add them to your roster. The real depth is that each monster has a 3x3 gene grid that gives them abilities and stat boosts that can completely customize to your liking by having them inherit the genes of other monsters you have collected. You can have up to 5 monsters of your choice in your party, and the 6th slot is fixed for story reasons and cannot be changed. Fortunately, it is a capable party member. And this leads me to my main complaint within the game. In order to be able to explore everything, you'll need to bring monsters along with you that have certain riding actions, which are additional actions monsters can perform while you are riding them outside of battle. Each monster only has 1 or 2 of these actions, and they are not able to be customized, which means that out of your 5 available slots, you'll have to reserve several of them for monsters that you may not necessarily like, if you want to be able to explore everything the game has to offer. He says this reminds him a lot of the HM slave in the earlier Pokemon games. People did not always like that, and has been phased out over the course of the series, so returning to something like that doesn't feel beneficial. Don't let this turn you off, though, as overall it's a lengthy, in-depth, turn-based JRPG that most fans of our genre should be able to get a lot of enjoyment out of. It's definitely worth checking out. So yeah, if you're like Jake or myself, who's never really gotten into the Monster Hunter games, this is a turn-based, very different than the other ones. Well, I guess the first one for the 3DS was turn-based, but as opposed to the other Monster Hunter games, those are much more action-oriented. This one's turn-based. So, yeah, Jake did a good job there kind of laying out everything for you. Hopefully that has encouraged you to want to go and pick it up. Most of the reviews have all been very positive about the game, and I think people are enjoying it. I think I saw it was the most downloaded game in July for the Switch. And looking at some of the numbers that went along with the system sales earlier, there's a lot of competition for sales on the Switch. So if that was the top downloaded game for the system, that's saying something about, obviously it was new, but I think it speaks to the quality of the games. If you've got a reader review you'd like to pass along to us, you can email me at jrpgreport@gmail.com or just connect with us on Facebook or Twitter. You can send to us that way. It doesn't matter. You can either do like Jake did and type it out there, or if you're not so good with your old fingers and can't type as well, hey, record it. That's fine. If it's of quality, we can use it here on the podcast. I'd be more than happy to add it there. I guess I would prefer it be newer JRPGs. That way we can, like with this one, if you're on the fence about a game, you can maybe listen to the review and help you decide whether you want to pick it up or not. But it doesn't have to be. If it's maybe a new iteration of a game, a remaster that's just come out for an older game, that would be cool too. But maybe we'd be open to some older retro reviews or something. But send it in, and we'll make a decision on it. That sounds good to me. This has been episode 177. We'll be back next week with an all-new podcast next Thursday. As things are getting back to normal. The kiddo started school today, or yesterday rather, so things are a little quiet. We're getting back to normal. And like I said, if a few more of you fine folks will check out the listener support options. I don't want to put a number on how many need to, but yeah, a few more of you guys will pop in there. We get a little bit higher percentage support. I think we can make those Sunday specials happen. It means a lot to me, whether you listen to and support us or not. It's a joy to come out here each and every week and deliver the news to you. I'd love to do some more for you in the future. My name is James Fisher. This has been your JRPG Report, episode 177. Till next time, guys, get back out there and level up.